Welcome to the Chapter 16 overview, Religion and Science, 1450 to 1750. Main idea. As established religions, especially Christianity, spread during the early modern era, they faced a challenge posed by a new intellectual emphasis on science. Relevance. There are just a few major religions in the world today. As you can see, Christianity has more followers than any other religion, though, as you may know, there are several different denominations that fit under that category. As you can see here on the map, the brown colors are some form of Christianity, and throughout the Americas here is predominantly Christian, and then much of Europe is predominantly Christian, headed into Eastern Europe, which, as you know, is where Eastern Orthodox Christianity spread. Then we have Islam in North Africa and much of the Middle East. This dark purple represents Buddhism. This color here in India is the color for Hinduism. So, of course, there's a lot of other religions, but the point is that the major religions you've studied so far in the course are the major religions in the world today. We're used to thinking of Christianity as a major world religion, but this was not the case before the early modern era. So this chapter helps us to understand the current state of religion in the world. Setting the stage. This chapter looks at three main topics: the spread of Christianity, the other major Eurasian religions, and the scientific revolution. Each of them touches on material you learned in previous chapters. Christianity spread in the empires of the Americas and along major trade networks. For Islam and Hinduism, you will look at religious policies in major empires like the Ottoman and Mughal. In China, you will study Confucianism, and finally you will pick up the traditions of Greek rationalism when studying the scientific revolution. The first section in the textbook begins with the globalization of Christianity. Christianity faced the internal challenge of the Protestant Reformation while expanding beyond Europe. At the beginning of the 16th century, Christianity was already divided, as you might remember, from the split between Eastern Orthodoxy and Roman Catholicism. Beginning in Germany, the Protestant Reformation further split the Roman Catholic faith in Western Europe. The Reformation was based on the protest of Martin Luther, who believed that Christian theology rested completely on the individual's relationship with the Bible. This painting is a dramatization of Martin Luther's posting of his protests on the door of a church in Germany. This challenged the authority of the Catholic Church as well as the extensive bureaucracy of priests and bishops that had developed over the centuries. Look at the snapshot on page 724 for more detail. Helped by the recent invention of the printing press, Luther's ideas circulated around Europe and found adherents from a wide variety of social, political, and national backgrounds. As kings chose sides, entire nations were dragged into war between Protestants and Catholics, culminating in the 30 Years' War. This war devastated the population of Germany, and with the peace that resulted, the authority of the Catholic Church over Europe was permanently weakened. So as you can see on this map, the orange-colored is the new Protestant denominations. The darker colors represents a greater dominance. So we mostly have North Europe. And then in the purple, we have the areas that are remaining as predominantly Roman Catholic. The green on this map represents Eastern Orthodox Christianity. In response to these developments, the Catholic Church enacted reforms known as the Catholic Counter-Reformation, but the region remained separated. Luther's skepticism echoed across intellectual circles, leading to the scientific revolution, which we'll get to in a future section. Christianity outward bound. As European nations solidified their power over the empires you studied in Chapter 14, they brought their religion with them as well, often with the overt efforts of missionaries. Thus Christianity spread in the Americas as Russia expanded to the east, and into Asia along the maritime trade networks that developed during the early modern era. In general, Christianity flourished in regions that did not have an existing literate religious tradition like Buddhism, Hinduism, or Islam. This picture shows Christian martyrs in Japan who were persecuted after Christianity was suppressed in that country in favor of Buddhism. Conversion and adaptation in Spanish America. In the aftermath of the Spanish conquest of Native American peoples like the Aztecs and Incas, Christianity took a firm hold in the American colonies. Many native people adopted the new religion, but there were resistance movements, such as the Taqui-Ancoy, an effort in Peru to revive native religions. The most common result of the spread of Christianity to Spanish America was the blending of religions, a form of syncretism. This picture of the Last Supper from Peru looks familiar to European Christians with the change of, if you look carefully at what is served on the plate in the center, that is a guinea pig, which is eaten as food in Peru. Syncretism happened across the colonies, and the result was a distinctively American practice of Christianity, rather than a copy of traditions practiced in Spain. China and the Jesuits. This section looks at the fate of Christianity in China to offer a comparison. The main difference between Spanish America and China is that when Christianity arrived in the East, China was a stable, powerful state, not a conquered territory. This meant that missionaries had to use different strategies to spread the faith. The Order of Jesuits, which had been formed during the Counter-Reformation, took care to be sensitive to Chinese customs, pointing out parallels between Confucianism and Christianity rather than attacking China's traditions. In contrast to Spanish America, this was a policy of accommodation, and it came to an end in the 18th century, when the Pope rejected the Jesuit methods and proclaimed authority over Chinese Christians, forbidding traditional Chinese practices. Most missionaries were expelled by the Chinese emperor, and Christianity lost favor. This is a common phenomenon in world history. The degree to which cultural traditions are accepted depends on the political character of the country being exposed to the tradition. Next, we look at the religious traditions in Afro-Asia. Persistence and change in Afro-Asian cultural traditions. Islam, Confucianism, and Hinduism adapted to political and social changes in a number of different ways. Expansion and renewal in the Islamic world. Islam continued its expansion during the early modern era, continuing the spread of the religion into sub-Saharan Africa and South, Central, and Southeast Asia. As Muslim holy men spread their faith, it blended with existing traditions in another example of syncretism, much like Christianity in the Americas. Orthodox Muslims rejected alterations to the core faith, leading to a variety of responses to the trend. The policies of Aurangzeb in Mughal India, which you learned about in Chapter 14, are one example. Another is the Wahhabi movement, which originated in Arabia in the early 18th century, shown here on this map, and continues to influence Islam in the region today, which is now known as Saudi Arabia. It is based on the teachings of Muhammad ibn Abd al-Wahhab and focused on traditions that drifted from the original teachings of the faith. Veneration of Sufi saints and visits to Muhammad's tomb are two examples. As you read, compare Wahhabi Islam to the Protestant Reformation, focusing on similarities and differences. China, new directions in an old tradition. During this era, Chinese philosophical thought was still dominated by Confucianism, as the reaction to the spread of Christianity during this era demonstrates. There were some changes, though, especially Neo-Confucianism, as espoused by the scholar Wang Yangming. He blended Buddhism and Confucianism in a philosophy that said anyone could attain a virtuous life by introspection, which was a moving away from the scholar gentry tradition. Another challenge to Confucianism was the Caozheng movement, which emphasized fact-based research rather than Confucian speculation. In India, bridging the Hindu-Muslim divide. Two movements in India demonstrate efforts to reconcile the Hindu and Muslim faiths, reflecting the cultural challenges of administering the Mughal Empire. One was the Bhakti movement, in which believers sought to achieve union with a deity through dance, poetry, and song. Its similarity to Sufism created a common ground for the coexistence of Hinduism and Islam. The second was the creation of a new religion called Sikhism. Founded by Guru Nanak, it challenged the caste system and developed a unique theology. Persecuted by many Hindus and the Muslim rulers of the Mughal Empire, Sikhism developed a military presence that aided the British in the overthrow of the Mughal Empire in the late 1700s. The third main section is about the scientific revolution. It's called the birth of modern science. The scientific revolution challenged traditional European ideas about the universe, fundamentally altering mankind's relationship with the natural world. The question of origins, why Europe? This section explores reasons why the scientific revolution began in Europe when other civilizations, such as the Islamic world and China, enjoyed centuries of advanced technological development. There are several reasons. Competition between European nations, a European university system, shown here, that granted independence to its scholars, and Europe's access to the knowledge from Islam and Asia due to the extensive trade networks of the day. Science as cultural revolution. Advancements made in European science during this time challenged so many accepted ideas that they amounted to a cultural revolution. Since the time of Greek rationalism, Europe held the view that the Earth was at the center of the universe, shown here in a model based on the writings of Aristotle. Scientists like Copernicus, Kepler, and Galileo used the scientific method and new technology to demonstrate, among other things, that the sun was at the center of the solar system. This challenged the teachings of the Catholic Church and began a process of examination of the laws of nature that found its culmination in the work of Isaac Newton. In short, scientists of the day taught their peers that human reason could discover the laws of the universe without relying on faith. These challenges to establish religious traditions had a major impact not just on science, but also on the laws of men. And that's the Enlightenment. The scientific revolution led philosophers to search for natural laws that could be applied to human behavior. This trend in intellectual thought became known as the Enlightenment, a promise that mankind would achieve understanding through application of scientific methods to a variety of fields. In economics, Adam Smith developed the theory of capitalism, based on the principle that men are motivated by self-interest. In politics, philosophers like Locke and Voltaire took aim at the notion that kings ruled by divine authority, opening the door to revolutions in democracy that took place in the late 18th and early 19th centuries. The promises made by these intellectuals were all based on the central Enlightenment notion of human progress, that through reason and effort, men could improve the world. Looking ahead, science in the 19th century. This section takes a look ahead at developments that technically will be a part of the next unit. As an emphasis on science and reason developed, later thinkers took the ideas formulated by people you've already learned about to a dimmer view of human society. With the theory of natural selection, Charles Darwin presented all life as a competitive struggle. Karl Marx took a similar approach to politics and economics, presenting socialism as a natural result of competition among social classes. These views of human nature had a massive impact on the world of the future, a reminder that the scientific revolution had consequences that echo through the centuries to the present day. The last heading is European Science Beyond the West. This section reviews the reception these European ideas received in other regions, looking at China, Japan, and the Ottoman Empire. All three states had a similar response in that they selectively borrowed technology that appealed to them. China and Japan were both exposed to scientific ideas through trade connections and accepted them when trends in their own countries moved towards acceptance. For instance, the Kaohsiung movement in China was receptive to scientific ideas due to its emphasis on data. In the Islamic Ottoman state, European ideas had less acceptance, as Muslims tended to focus on their own scientific traditions and regarded non-Muslim ideas with a zealous skepticism. Overall, when you look back at this unit and match the increasing political and economic power of Europe with the scientific revolution, you can predict that these ideas will not go away. In fact, they had a major role in creating the modern world. Now for the 10-second spice review. The spread and development of major religions was affected by social customs, while existing political ideas were challenged by the Enlightenment philosophy, which changed perceptions of the relationship between man and nature. All the major religions experienced changes during this time period, as traditions were brought into contact with each other by trade networks. Now for the visual summary. In short, the chapter is about cultural changes, and there are three main sections in the chapter. The first is dealing with Christianity. And for Christianity, you learn about the Protestant Reformation and how Christianity spread to the Americas. Then you move over to Eurasian religions and focus on three main cultural changes there: Wahhabi Islam, Sikhism in the Mughal Empire, and Neo-Confucianism in China. And then you learn about the scientific revolution and look at the scientific advancements and how that influenced the intellectual tradition known as the Enlightenment. That's your Chapter 16 overview. Happy reading!